Thanks for joining me again. Got the little CityBug down. We've got front brake pads and discs. These are pretty bad, you know. We've worn these down. It's been driven quite hard, but we're going to change them. We're going to put some new brake pads, new discs in there. We're going to go through the whole job, showing you exactly what to do, so you can have a go if you feel like you want to learn something and want to put some brake pads and discs on your car. Nice straightforward job on these. Everything's straightforward pretty much. These are really, brilliant to work on. Anyway, enough waffling. Let's crack on. Let's get this wheel off. We'll get it jacked up and get down to the dirty bits. This job is exactly the same on the Toyota Aygo, the Citroen C1 and the Peugeot 107. Exactly the same, no difference at all. So we've got the new parts, got the new brake pads, got the new brake discs here. I've got these off the CityBug shop. I'll put links in the description for that. It did take a week for delivery, but if you're not in any rush, that's absolutely fine, officer. If you want them quick, I'll put a link in the Amazon shop, and you can get these sent to you next day delivery. So yeah, let's crack on, let's get it sorted. All right, first thing we're going to do is jack it up. Let's get the jack under the car. We can either go onto the sill, or we can get it under the subframe underneath. You can see on the car you've got these little ridges here. With this metal one, it will mark it slightly, but that's a good strong point to jack it up. And we're only going up enough to get the wheel in the air. So I've got a locking wheel nut key on this one, which will slip in there. So, like I've got the impact gun. If you haven't got one of those, you'd have to crack the wheel nuts off before you jack it in the air with a bar or a ratchet. But yeah, this is great. The impact gun makes such light work of this. You can soon with these nuts off, and you can see my socket there's got the little plastic shield on it to protect your alley wheels. If you like the wheels on the car and you want to look into the alloy wheels, I've got a video on that. Link will be in the description. Tells you all about the offsets and everything. Whoa, look at them suckers. These are pretty worn down. I like to get my use out of my brakes and discs. But the brakes still work absolutely fine on this, believe it or not. But we have now got it down. I'll put the wear measurements in. So to get these off, we've got to get the caliper off. We've got a little disc retaining bolt there. We've got to get that off. Let's turn the steering fully to the right. So if you were just changing your brake pads, you just crack this little nut off here, swing the caliper up, which we're going to do in a minute, and take your brake pads out and put new ones in, and job's a good one. Put it back down again. I've got a video on the Aygo on just changing brake pads, so if you want to do just brake pads, that's a good video to go from. We're going to get this caliper off, and we're going to have to take the two big mounting bolts out on the back to get this whole caliper out of the way. So this is a 13mm socket. We pop it on there. There's your bolt. Now that's out of the way, we can grab hold of this and just pull it towards us, which will force the piston back in a little bit and should allow us to then swing it up. So that's come loose, we can swing that up. Look at them. We've used them pretty well, look. Right, so we've got to get these pads out, so we're going to stick the screwdriver in here and give it a little wiggle waggle. Look at them, what they're crumbled up, they are. Look at them. This outer one is really worn down. Like I say, I like to get me wear out of them. Oh, well stuck out. screwdriver needed. There we go, this one's bigger. This should do the job. There it is. That's that one out. Look at that sucker. That's completely destroyed that. And look how bad they are behind there. Whoa, nice. Now I've purposely left this till the absolute worst I could do without it being bloody dangerous, just to show you how bad these things can be. Now the braking on this car was still brilliant, but you can see how far down and how knackered these brake pads are and how crabby the discs look, but it still stopped really well. Let's measure these discs. Now the minimum disc thickness on these is 19mm. That's the recommended minimum thickness. So let me get me, I'm gonna have to just grind a little bit off the edge of this because I've only got a caliper, a vernier caliper to measure, and it needs to be level, otherwise we're just gonna get the pitted ridge on the edge. So let me just take this ridge off the edge, we'll get the caliper in there and we'll see how thick this disc actually is. Ideally you're wanting a disc to be smooth without any corrosion and lips, but small amounts of corrosion, you know, it's not the end of the world for sure. Let's measure this and see what's what. So let's just whiz a bit off of here. This is the little Milwaukee grinder, sander, absolutely fantastic little M12, brilliant bit of kit. It uses little quick lock grinding pads on there. You just pop them in and out and you can have all different grades of grit. Because if it wasn't so bad, if it wasn't so corroded and you were below the thickness, you could just remove the outer lip, the wear lip, and put some new pads in there and crack on. So we've got that now, so at a point where I can get a measurement off it. So let me just get me vernier. Audi special this is, but it should do the job. Let's turn it on. Okay, here we go. So we're all zeroed up on that. Let's get it back down to zero. Right, and let's get this in here and see what we get. .76. So we are down below minimum wear, but you can see how bad it is. You've really got to wear them down to get them below the minimum thickness. So 17mm there. These definitely need changing. Now, before we push back the piston on the caliper there, we need to just make sure we've got room in the fluid reservoir, the brake fluid reservoir under the bonnet. So let's just pop the bonnet and check that. So under the bonnet here, we've got this fluid reservoir. We'll just crack that off. We'll wind that off there, and you can see the fluid level is just about on the maximum there. But now the lid's off, it'll also help us when we squeeze that piston back, it'll go back a little bit easier. We just got to keep an eye on that, make sure it doesn't come over the top. If it does get really high, we'll have to just take a little bit out. Now what I'm using to pull back this piston is a big pair of grips, and we literally just go between that point there and that point there. We just gently squeeze that, and you can see that whizzing in nicely. Nice and easy, all the way back in. While we're here, we need to just check these slider pins as well. Make sure that they move freely, like that. If they don't, you can just pull them all the way out and grease them up. That's that one there, all good. Let's whip these two big bolts out the back of the caliper there, and we'll have this bracket off. So you can see from this fluid reservoir, all I've done is push that one piston back, and it's put it right up to the top there. Now, the last thing we want is for this to overflow, because if it gets on the paintwork, it'll just take your paintwork off. After 20 minutes, it'll start to lift your paint. So we need to just drain that down. What I've got here is just a little syringe with a pipe on the end, and I can pop that into the tank there and just draw fluid there, sucking it back into my syringe, taking it down, look, back to where we want it to be. Right, back down to these two big bolts under here. These are going to be tight, for sure they're going to be tight. and they're 17mm again, like the wheel nuts. So if I just get that on there, give it a little tap in there, and same on the top one. Just bit of corrosion there. Okay, let's see if the gun will bang them off. You could use a big breaker bar if you're struggling. Cracked off. Let's go for the top one. No sweat, look, straight out with them. 1, 2. And now this whole caliper assembly will just come away like that. Some people say don't hang it on the pipe, but these are really light, it's not going to damage it. You could just hang that if you wanted to, or you could just hook it in just under there like that, just to hold it out of the way while we get the disc off. Right, the next one is to get this locking screw out of the way there. I have got little spigot rings on these as well for the alley wheels, so I'm going to need to take those off. I'll just get behind that with a screwdriver and just prise that off, ready to go on the next one, on the new one. There we go. Okay, let's try and get this in. Now this might be really tight, I might have to tap it. It's been tapped in the past with a chisel and a hammer, so we'll see if we need to do that this time. Okay, so I've got my little bit box with all the threads and different sizes in there. I'll put links in the description for all of this stuff again, like I always do. And this one, is it going to be a TX30? Yeah, TX30. Give that a little tap. Got some bigger gloves. I keep ripping them rubber ones. I'll stick these on for a minute. Right, let's have a look. Just see how tight this is. Oh, something happened, but it is really tight. So I'm just going to give that a tap with the hammer and chisel to try and free it off. So all we're doing is just getting the chiseling on the edge and then just tapping it round. Once we get a bite in it, like I say, there is a mark on it already where it's been done before. And then just tap it round, hopefully not destroying the inner bit too much. Yeah, so much moved then. You did the note change. Let's just try and get that back in again. There we go. Will it come out this time? Oh, here she goes. Just freed it off enough to shift it. And you can see the disc is ready to jump off. Look, it wants to come off already. There it is, that's the bolt out, and you can see the marks that we've made on wherever the camera is. Yeah. You can see the marks we've made in that with the chisel. No great shake, so that will go back on again, no problem. And this disc now will just lift off the edge. And you can see how badly corroded this one is. It's a right mess, isn't it? Look at the state of that. A disc at its worst. Whoa, look at that sucker. Right, let's get this cleaned up to start with. Now you can use a bit of emery cloth to give that a good clean, just get all the corrosion and any muck off of that. Or I've got my little Milwaukee sander. I'll just give this a quick whiz round. There we go. That looks nice and clean. Ready for a new disc to go on there. Okay, so I'll have my little screw thread at the top, and then we'll drop this into place like that. We can, I've got a little bit of alley slip here, or copper slip, whichever one you want to use. Just drop a tiny bit on the end of that, and we'll have that going back in again. There we go, not got mega tight with that, just enough to pin it in place. Lovely. Now we can grab hold of the caliper and we can slide that back in again where it came from. And we can drop the bolts back in there. If you're wanting to torque these up, you'd be looking at 89 Newton meters. And we can whiz those back up. We'll have a look at his new brake pads we've got. Okay, we don't get any new slider clips, so we've got to make sure they're nice and clean. These ones just come as a block of pads. So we're just getting these, giving them a good scrubbing out inside. Make sure they're nice and clean. We've got his new brake pads there, and we're just trying to see how they go in and what the feel is like. Straight away, I can tell that these are tight, really tight going in. So I would think we're going to have to take the sliders out and give her a clean behind, actually clean down the caliper base. So they're really tight at the minute, so what I shall do is just make sure that's really clean inside. Let's pop these off and give it a really good cleaning out. So we can just get the screwdriver under the lip of that and gently prise it up, and we can get the little sliders out. So again with that one, we'll do this one as well. So, and now we can really give this a good cleaning down. I usually get on quite well with the screwdriver, but you could use a file or emery on the end of the screwdriver or something along those lines, a wide brush. And again, we've got this little bit of emery cloth here. We can get that in there and just finish it off. That looks nice. Okay, and then we'll put these little retainer, we'll put these little squealer sliders back in again. If you forgot to put those in, or if you had those missing from your calipers, you'd probably find that your brake pads clunked every time you went forwards and backwards. That you get like a knocking sound. And we'll do the same with the top ones. Just pull the front lip, and there's a little clip on the front that will then release it. The top ones shouldn't be as bad because the water doesn't sit down there so much, but I'll still give them a really good clean out. Okay, and we'll get those back in again. Okay, now let's try them pads in there and see if we get on a bit better. So what we can do is get the pad, and like I said about this is alley slit, you just put a tiny bit on there. Now you don't really need to do this, you don't have to do it, but I shall pop a bit on there just for the vid. I don't normally bother. I find that it makes no difference, and sometimes they get gunked up. The heat soon burns it off if you're driving hard, but it does stop a squeal every now and again. So we'll drop that into there. Now we can pop that into the sliders. We'll get that in there and just tap that back in. Like that. That's one side done. And we'll do the same the other side. Just a small bit on the top of there, a bit on the bottom. Push it in. We're going to go in at an angle, pushing the clips back and slide it in nicely. Now we can drop the piston down, we'll push the pin in, and then we'll have his bolt back in there. Before I do that, I'll just show you what you do. If, like I said about these pins, if they are tight, if one of them's too tight and it won't, what you can do is just pull that back like that, slide the pin all the way out, clean it up, drop a bit of lube on it, and then pop it back in again. And if you push it all the way, it will go back onto its rubber, like so, and then you are ready to go. So you can clean those up if you wanted to, if yours were a bit stiff. Right, let's get this going back in again. And we'll whiz that one up. And these are 30 Newton meters, if you wanted to know. Do that up nice and tight. We ain't got to go mad with it, not crazy tight. We'll straighten the steering up and get the wheel back on. So because we've got these different alley wheels, we've got the spigot to go in the middle there. So we'll just drop that in first. These wheels are the ATS Cup Juniors. I've seen a few of you on the CityBug there have got the Cup wheels. They are beautiful. We'll get that lined up. I'm going to just pop a little bit of grease on the back of these because these are extended bolts. They are getting a little bit of corrosion on the bottom. Look. Just a little noggin on the end of that should just help that a little bit. Just heard it squeak as I went to put it back in again, and might as well just grease them to save us any problems in the future. You don't want to put loads on there, otherwise when you drive down the road it all flipping comes out and goes everywhere, and all of your brakes and that. So just a small amount on there is enough. You will get a small amount of resistance when you spin it. It's absolutely fine though, no problem at all. We know that everything is good. Brilliant. Always when your wheels, or you've got it jacked up, if you grab the wheel side to side and just give it a little wiggle, if there's any kind of knocking or play, you'll know that you've got ball joint wear. Same top to bottom, just give it a up and down, and you'll know if the bottom ball joint has got any play in it. This one, there's nothing there at all, left to right, everything is absolutely fine. Let's get it down and do the other side. So I'm just going to whisk through this side really quickly. If there's anything any different, then I shall point it out to you. But we'll just straight away whip the wheel off. you want to be safe and you haven't got an axle stand, you could just drop the wheel under the car. So same again, we'll just pop this little bolt out the bottom, out this caliper slider, grab hold of the caliper, give it a little tug and then lift it up with the aid of a screwdriver there. Again, we'll just bang these out. Not as bad as the other side, not quite, still pretty bad though. And using that big old water pump pliers there, we can push back that piston, making sure it's not sticking anyway, making sure it goes back nice and smoothly, which it does. Give it that last bit, we just check the reservoir, make sure it's not overflowing. Then we get straight around the back there and knock these big old caliper retaining bolts off. They came out nice and easy. Just checking the threads on and making sure they're not corroded in any way. If they were, we could just get the wire brush on them and buff them up, get them nice and clean. This time I'm going to go straight for a tap, just to see if I can crack it off. Mark on it. I can see it's starting to move. I think that's moved a little bit. Let's see if we can get the socket on it now. Oh, that's tight. This one is tight. Let's go again. I think I need a bigger hammer, that's what I need. Thing is, if you go too big, it just chomps a great big chunk out of it and it doesn't do a great deal. So there it is, you can see it starting to move now. Gotcha. Whew. That one's not quite as bad as the other side, but it's still plenty worn down though. Look at that. Got some great ridges on that. Like we did before, we're going to give this a really good clean. Make sure there's no corrosion on there. Good as new. And all we want to do is get back to the, you can see the rings around here of the original manufacturer. If we can get back to those, then we know we're pretty good. If we don't get rid of this corrosion, you put the new discs on and you end up with wheel wobble when you're braking. I did also pick up on a comment from a previous video where they were asking about these metal little metal plates, top and bottom, and what the purposes were, because one of them had fell off. Do I need it? These are heat shields, so they stop the heat when you're braking really hard or you're really driving aggressively, your brakes are really hot, and it just stops the heat damaging the wires or the bottom ball joint rubber. So do you need them? Depends how hard you're driving. If you're driving pretty harsh, your discs are going to get hot and you will end up melting your rubbers. If you're driving just like, normal, then no, you shouldn't get it that hot, but they have to put them on there because they don't know how people are going to drive, so they have to cover their arses. But yeah, normal circumstances, they don't get that hot to melt rubbers, but if you're driving aggressively, then it will do. Some discs, when you get them, have got like a really greasy film on them. These haven't, these are really clean. Some of them have got the greasy film, and you will need to just put some brake cleaner on or a bit of petrol and just wipe it off. Otherwise it will just make your brakes not work very well for a bit. It's not the end of the world if you forget. You just have to be careful when you're braking for a few hundred miles, for a few miles. A few hundred miles, what am I on about? So we'll drop a bit of that grease on the little bolt there just to help it go back in and whiz it back up. I'll have this caliper back in again, align those brackets up there, and then just wind the bolts back in. Get them both started before you do it up nice and tight. Same as when you're undoing it, you always just loosen off both before you take one all the way out. Just makes life a little bit easier. Then we'll pop these pads back in again. You can see how easy this side's going back in. It's not half as corroded as the other side. And I'm putting this side in dry as well, just to show you that, well, the difference. Do you need the grease on the pads? These are going in lovely without it. It doesn't make a bit of difference, especially when you've got these sliders. We'll have that swing bolt, slider bolt back up again, whatever you want to call it. And then pop the wheel back on, and that's a good job. Okay, now we're done. We need to pump the pedal up, so we get inside the car. And now with this pedal, it's quite important that when you're re-pumping, you could pump it all the way to the floor, but you don't want to. Just give it little jabs until it goes firm, like that. Reason being, if you press this all the way to the floor, it's going beyond where it would normally go, and you can damage the seals in your master cylinder. If you just press it in small presses, it will push the piston back out again, but not doing anything different to what the master cylinder normally works. It's not out of its range. So now that's gone nice and firm, the brakes are up, let's check the fluid level. The last thing we want to do is to press that master cylinder further than what it would normally travel and damage the seals in it, and then have to replace the master cylinder, because, you know, this car's done 80,000 odd miles. It's a 2008 model, I think, so it's you know, it's a good few years old. Let's check that level. And now you can see, or maybe you can't because of the shadow, and I've got some wicked shadows going on, but the level now is crack on. It's right to the top there, which is where we want it to be, so we can pop the lid back on. If it wasn't, you could top it up, bit of .4 brake fluid, lids on, happy days. And that's it, job's done. New front brake pads, new discs. I think we've covered most of it there, gone over everything. If you're interested, wheel nut torques are 100 Newton meters if you want to torque your wheels up, but nice and tight, don't go crazy on them. I've got a video on the wheel change, how to do the wheels up without a torque wrench, you know, using your body weight and stuff like that. So I'll put links in the description for all of these things. I hope this video's been of use to you. If there's anything you want to know, just drop me some comments. If you don't like anything I've done, drop me some comments. I always love your feedback, it's fantastic. Yeah, keep watching, we'll find some more stuff to do, and enjoy the channel. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. One thing we must do is take it for a little road test. All I'd say to you, just take it easy for the first 10 miles or so. Don't brake too hard, just bed them pads in and you'll be absolutely fine.